What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're going to be going over Nick Walker. What happened at this year's Olympia? Many people expected, Nick to be in that top four. Some people even expected him to win, and I even expected him to come third in my predictions video. So me going over that today and telling you exactly what happened. Alright, so the first thing we need to note is when Nick competed at the Pittsburgh Pro and looked the way he did, he wasn't competing against all of the best athletes in the world. Yes, there were some very good athletes. Derek Lunsford was there, Martin Fitzwater was there, William Bonac as well. I believe that was the top four, and then Nick was second. But those guys, especially Derek and Martin anyway, were very off. To me, Derek at the Pittsburgh Pro, he still beat Nick, and out of the three shows that Derek did, that was his worst showing, in my opinion. His legs weren't super full. He had pretty good conditioning, but it wasn't crazy. I think he brought, a better look at the Arnolds and the Olympia as well, and that still wasn't enough. The package that Nick brought there, yes, it was very controversial and a lot of people thought Nick won, but it was definitely super close either way. So the fact that Derek was off and at the Olympia he came on, that's going to expect, Nick to drop a couple placings, not to mention Martin Fitzwater, who brought an amazing package at the Olympia, and also, Samson, Hadi, and Andrew also weren't at Pittsburgh, and those guys all placed ahead of Nick. So that also explains how he was able to drop down so far. In bodybuilding, you're only as big as the person standing next to you. If I put a couple of my own stage photos up, you'll probably won't really guess how much I weigh. I probably look quite a bit bigger than I actually am in these photos, but if you were to have me stand next to someone else who is a lot bigger, you'll suddenly realize that I'm actually not that massive on stage or whatever. I was only 130 pounds in those photos. Okay, and another thing is, in my opinion anyway, and a lot of other people, Nick did not really he did not bring in the same package that he had in Pittsburgh, particularly the quads. From the front, Nick has never had the greatest quads. They, lack quite a bit of size and stuff, but at Pittsburgh, they weren't too bad. At the Olympia here, there was a noticeable drop-off. Like, they really did not have the fullness and stuff like that. And also, I don't think he brought in as good of conditioning. I think he was a lot sharper at Pittsburgh as well. So with Nick coming off and then a lot of the competition not being there, kind of, makes him go down a few placings. Nick also doesn't have the smallest waist. He doesn't have the prettiest physique. We all know that, but I also don't think that his waist got any tighter or anything like that. If anything, I think it was a little bit wider here and stuff like that. So that's just going to hurt his aesthetics even more, especially when you go up to guys like Andrew Jack, Derek, Samson, and stuff like that who have these really tight waists. That's just going to be a huge, huge weakness for Nick. And when it comes to Nick even falling behind Martin, in my opinion, I like Nick more from the side and from the rear, but unfortunately from the front, specifically in the front double bicep, the front lat spread, and the ab and thigh, he really loses those poses to Martin by, I would say, quite a large margin, especially the front double bicep and, well, I guess all three, front double bicep, ab and thigh, front lat spread. The front double, I mean, Martin's quads are so much better. He's got a better shape. And yeah, Nick has better arms, but that's nowhere near matching, Martin's quads, pretty much better condition. That small, tight waist on Martin, that X-frame, he's taken that. And in the front lat spread, it's kind of a similar story, except I think Martin wins it even more because the arms are kind of, you know, taken out of the pose a little bit. You're really only seeing the outer arm, which I think Martin's outer arm is better than his in, so I think he really dominates there. And then on the ab and thigh, you know, Nick's thighs were really not that great at this show. And, you know, his waist is not all that small. He doesn't have that taper. Whereas Martin, I would argue, has the best quads in the world right now with the crazy striations, crazy fullness, and he's got the abs. You know, he doesn't have the most aesthetic looking abs ever. There's a little bit of a split there, but it's still pretty good, and he's got that taper, so he easily destroys Nick in those poses. So even if Nick is better in those other 5 poses, and I would also argue that Martin Fitzwater's most muscular is the best most muscular next to Hadi Chopin on that stage. It's absolutely unreal. I know a lot of people like Nick's most muscular, but for me anyway, I would also give the most muscular to Martin, and that would really make it 4 poses to 4. I like Nick from the side and from the rear more, but overall I think it's quite close, especially in this. I think Nick pretty much wins the rear poses, but from the side I think it's very close, and then Martin just dominates the front for me. So that it really explains why Nick Walker was not able to really live up to people's expectations and stuff like that. Now people are kind of again, like, it's kind of crazy to me, like everyone was like, yeah, Nick Walker, and then as soon as he has one bad showing or whatever, everyone's like, oh, you're never winning the Olympia and stuff like that. And they may be right, but I don't think it's impossible that he couldn't win the Olympia. If he can bring back that size in his legs, and he can, you know, improve on the conditioning and stuff, and other people come off, I do think he has a chance. But if everyone comes at their best, if Derek, Martin, Andrew, and Samson, and Hadi all show up at their best, and Nick shows up at his best, Nick is not beating them, in my opinion, just because he doesn't have the shape. But overall, guys, let me know your thoughts on Nick Walker's placing. You know, I'm obviously not the biggest fan of his physique. I met the guy, though. You know, he was nice enough to take a picture for me, with me anyway, even though I could tell he was probably a little bit frustrated from the result at the Olympia. You know, he said it at the press conference himself. He was going to be the Mr. Olympia champion. So, you know, what are you going to do? Shit happens, but, you know, better luck next year. But thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.